voice of the Giants for NBC Sports Bay Area, and our 95% The Game Giants insider, Dave Flemming, joins us via the River Islands guest line. Dave, good morning. Spadoni alongside Shasky. Let's just start right there. The injuries announced yesterday, obviously the biggest being, and I don't want to, belittle what's going on with Bader and McDonald, but the season that Casey Schmitt was having, and for him to tear his meniscus and go on the IL, just brutal, Dave.
Yeah, although, I think, if you want to be a little optimistic, the injury was way better than it could have been. Meniscus is a lot better than tearing an ACL all those injuries now are better than they were 20 years ago. But Casey's still got a chance to come back this year. We'll see how serious the tear is and what they have to do to repair it. But all things considered, I actually thought that was pretty good news. The McDonald one is a more serious injury, and too bad for him. He has a great attitude about it. He was very determined to come back better than ever, and so that you love to see that. But it's probably going to cost Trevor McDonald all of next year or close to it. So that hurts when you're an organization right now that's really looking for pitching talent and needs as many arms as you can get. I have full confidence Casey's going to come back better than ever. It's a little bit more of a question with Trevor McDonald, and so I'm trying to stay optimistic, I guess, is what I'm saying about Casey. Like, it could have been worse, and he's going to be back, and he's going to be fine.
Yeah, it just sucks for him. I mean, you're preaching work hard, play hard, and he's doing a hard 90, and he's rounding the bag hard because it's a little blooper into right field, and he tries to put the brakes on, and you're right. I mean, it could have been worse, but I feel for the guy because he's played first base, second base, shortstop, third base, left field, DH. I think he's one of the pillars on this team. Not knowing what's going to happen here at the deadline, how should they view him for next year heading into that season?
I think they should. Well, I think they should view him. My guess is that they're going to view him as the everyday second baseman. As much as we absolutely love Luis Arraez, and it's kind of hard to talk about because nobody wants this around the Giants. Nobody wants to be trading Luis Arraez away. He is the everything they could have possibly asked for in the clubhouse, on the field, leadership by example, hard work, excellent performance. But that's the reality of this season as a pending free agent. And when so many of your young prospects are concentrated at the second base, shortstop, third base positions, it's just really hard to imagine. Arraez deserves a multi-year contract. He deserves to be treated like one of the better players in the game. And it's hard to imagine the Giants feeling like that's the best move for the long-term future of the franchise. Add all that up, and it means that Luis Arraez is probably in his last few days in a Giants uniform. That stinks. Nobody likes that, but that's the reality. So that said, I think the Giants will view Casey as the everyday second baseman next year. And then, as the young players start to get closer and closer, and they're making progress, but as those guys get closer, then Casey's ability to move around and versatility and all that stuff comes back into play. And, it could be that long-term then he moves around some more. But I think he's shown enough at second base to me to where it's not, third base, he's a potential Gold Glover. Second base, probably the ceiling isn't that high, but he's shown enough to me to where I think he can do it and he could play there every day and do a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, his arm definitely plays there, turning two, and bigger body. You can see, I'm not saying he is that, but like Sandberg, Jeff Kent, some of these bigger body guys that got moved from the corner and then had to go play second base. The Arraez play last night in the hole on his knees, flipping it to Willie. I know Willie couldn't get the back end of that double play. It was a hell of a play, and it's a great point on Arraez. I'm bummed. He's a hell of a ball player, and I love the way that he attacks these at-bats. Last night, though, I'm watching Bryce Eldridge, and look, he struck out like 43 or 44 times in his last 110 at-bats. It just feels like the All-Star break came at a kind of a funky time for him. And he had the one at-bat where Bryce Eldridge is fouling a couple off, and then they throw him the changeup, and he strikes out. And the result is a strikeout. It's like, Got to get him up one more time in this game. And he gets up and he hits the home run. And look, the score is whatever, 8-0 at the time. But I mean, it feels like that's kind of the silver lining right now for the Giants is him having those kinds of at-bats. So how big was that at-bat for him late in that game? Because I think a lot of people kind of roll their eyes, late inning home run. I thought it was a huge at-bat for him.
Yeah, every single at-bat for him is big. This guy is the building block of this team going forward. And every at-bat, every chance for a rep against a good arm, every chance for a situational at-bat. I think, some of what you're talking about, his recent struggles, some of that is, if you notice, I think he's scuffling a little bit in these RBI, runner at third type situations. And I think he's caught in between a little bit. It's very, very common for a young player to be like this. And what I mean by that is, he's built to just drive the ball and try to, swing hard and hit it hard. And that's kind of his game. And I think in these RBI spots, like those situational at-bat spots, you see him trying to shorten up and kind of feeling for contact, and that's good. Like, learn how to do that, but it is a learning process. And so I think we're seeing some of the growing pains of a young guy who is kind of learning how to play the game at the highest level, not just hit, not just swing, but play the game at the highest level. So every rep for him is huge. He's also got this thumb thing going on, and the thumb is not great, and he's fighting it. And so I think,
is that why he has the pad on the hand?
Yeah, it's beat up a little bit. And so it's why he hasn't played much first base or any first base, I think, all week. And that's part of being a young player, learning how to play hurt. This game, it's like a war of attrition. This game just beats your body down over a long season. The kid's 21 years old. This is by far the most, even DHing, 60, 70% of the time, this is the most physically taxing he's ever had. And so all of that, I mean, like pushing through that fatigue, through sort of the bumps and bruises, or then the more serious injury issues, facing all kinds of different pitchers, situational hitting, all that stuff. Like, it's a fire hose right now for him in terms of learning how to deal with all this. And he couldn't be more impressive. Like, I can tell you, inside the Giants, everybody is so impressed with the way this guy has handled the year. It is the number one silver lining story. It's the number one positive story of the year for this team.
Talking with Dave Flemming here on the Morning Roast, courtesy of the River Islands guest line, voice of the Giants for NBC Sports Bay Area, R95.7 The Game, Giants Insider. Dave, the next time we will talk to you will be post-trade deadline, we assume. Do you anticipate, obviously, we referenced Luis Arraez, obviously Robbie Ray, both those guys, it sounds like are probably going to get traded. Do you anticipate this team looking dramatically different, though, a week from now?
I think there's a pretty decent chance that 4 or 5 of the players on the Major League roster are not on the roster in a few days. And there's at least an outside chance that it could be a few more than that. The flip side of that is, and I've talked to Buster about this recently, Buster is not going to trade any of these players for no return. Like, Buster is not going to just dump players. That's not going to happen. So these deals are going to have to make sense for the Giants in the way that the deals last deadline made sense for the Giants. You look back on last deadline, it's really hard to believe. I don't think you could really make an argument that the Giants didn't make their franchise better last year at the deadline. And that's, everybody misses Tyler Rogers. And the performance of Tyler Rogers has been missed greatly. But considering the players that they got back in those 2 deals, if even one of those guys goes on to be a big part of this franchise's future, then you've done well with pending free agents and relief pitchers. And that's the idea here again, is like, grow this franchise, grow the talent base for the long and medium term. And so all that said, Buster's not going to do it just to do it. He is going to do it if it makes his team better.
Dave, you're talking about just kind of the overarching feel of the organization. And I don't know how deep you go into it, but every day I see a highlight from Luis Hernandez or one of the young guys, that are at the minor league level from this team. I mean, what's realistic to those fans that are out there? They're, Gavin and Bo Davidson. I mean, I know they're all at different levels right now. I mean, when I see this wave of youngsters that they have at the bottom level here, what is realistic for Giants fans to cling to? Is that just all false hope? We'll be good in 3 or 4 years. I don't know how to feel. The Farm's in the best shape it's been ranking wise forever. But at some point, it's got to materialize to more players like Bryce Eldridge.
Yeah, it does, but you can't force that and you can't rush that. And so you should absolutely be very positive about this. The Giants farm system has had a great year with a capital G. The Giants farm system has been awesome. And it's not just winning games down there or whatever. It's true player development. If you look at the hitting side in the Giants minor leagues, almost every single notable young player who is a hitter has had a good year and has made improvements on what they've done in the past. That is something really good is happening right now in the Giants offensive development pipeline. And whoever gets credit for that, whether it's Randy Wynn or it's the hitting coordinators or the individual hitting coaches, I think the Giants believe they have good people down there, or it's just the Giants have accumulated a lot of good talent. Those things are real. But that's not a magic potion. That doesn't mean you're going to automatically win 100 games anytime soon. But that's how you have to build the thing. And you got to keep piling up talent. That's the difference to me now versus maybe even, a decade ago or even more than that. The Giants were sort of top heavy with prospects and turned some of those into stars. And you have to do that. And that's the beauty of Eldridge is you've turned a young player into a guy who looks like he's going to be an impact big leaguer. That's the hardest thing to do in the whole game. Some of these young guys that the Giants have are going to be that, it feels like to me, but they also have depth and they also have a wave of players who can help them in different ways. And both things are good. The draft, I think, was super positive for the Giants. The Giants came away with 3 pitchers that I think you talk to some of the Giants people, they felt like they got 3 of the top 6 pitchers that they had evaluated in the whole draft, which is really saying something. Organization's in a really good place. They have articulated a vision for how they want that all to go, and it's working. And you're right to be skeptical and pump the brakes and say, we got to see. But there's no doubt that they've had a ton of positives. The kid last night that you're referencing, Luis Arraez, is 17 years old.
Crazy.
17 years old. He hit a 450-foot home run in the California League last night at age 17. That is stuff that normal players do not do. And he is not a normal talent. That guy's a big-time talent.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Level, every day he's doing something. And I'm like, his body looks like old. I'm not Juan Uribe. I'm going old school Jose Uribe. You know what I mean? Way back in the day, late 80s Giants. So there was an article written right now about Tony Vitello from Andrew Baggerly in The Athletic. And it was kind of bringing up the incident from last week where he got tossed from the game. You and I discussed it with Joe, and I think a lot of us wanted to see a little more fire. You were on the broadcast saying you were losing it. I mean, you were just losing your mind here. I don't know. I'm not going to ask you to dissect Tony and how we're feeling about him in this moment or whatever. If you had to evaluate his year, though, what's been the area of the most improvement you've seen from the beginning to now? And what's an area that you think he can improve on some more here as we go down the stretch?
Well, I think he's definitely learned how managing a big league roster is different than managing a college season or a college roster. I think we've seen that in terms of workload of relievers, in terms of getting some veterans out of games, giving some more regular rest. He's done that more and more as the year has gone on. And I think that's a really positive thing. I think those are important things. And Tony's actually been one thing about Tony is he is really honest, and he'll say out loud the stuff that he's learning, and he's discussed players coming into his office and telling him, hey, we need some blowout games. A couple veterans need to be coming out of those games and just get us off our feet. And Tony's listened to all that stuff, and That's the kind of stuff that you probably don't do as a head coach in college. So I think that's been a real growth area for him. I do believe that we're starting to see more of the Tony Vitello personality come out. And we still haven't seen like the super fiery, and we may never see that. His idea may be that as a big league manager, you can't be that way. But I think everybody around the Giants wants him to be himself and wants him to be a true leader of this franchise. And I think understandably so early in the year, he was taking a passive sort of backseat role to the veteran players on this team. I'm not going to come in here as the new guy and tell you guys what to do and tell you guys how to run your careers. And I understand why he did that, but I think they hired him for a reason. And I think he's becoming more and more comfortable of, hey, you know what? I am in charge around here, and I can pull some levers to try to maybe change some of the things that I'm seeing. And I think the Giants want more of that.
Talking with Dave Flemming here on the Morning Roast, Spadoni and Shasky, courtesy of the River Islands guest line. Dave, you're very tapped in on all things Bay Area sports, obviously. Niners, Sharks, Macklin Celebrini getting a huge contract this morning, which is awesome. And obviously the Golden State Warriors are a big talking point right now. LeBron James going to the Philadelphia 76ers. Draymond re-signed a one-year deal yesterday. People are angry. People are upset. If you're a Golden State Warriors fan this morning, they feel like they didn't add any new pieces. They feel like they're running back a team that wasn't very good last year with an aging roster. I'm just curious if you see any parallels with how this is ending in Golden State here, this kind of fading dynasty, if you will, with how it kind of ended with the San Francisco Giants and that kind of fading core as they got older.
Well, I think here's the parallels are this. When you have special all-time Hall of Fame talent, you just feel an obligation to, A, keep those guys around, B, go for it in win mode as long as you have those players. And in basketball, you really feel that. In baseball, like we just saw Mike Trout here, right? I mean, Mike Trout has never won a playoff game. Never won a playoff game. It's amazing that could even be possible. But that's the nature of baseball. In basketball, when you have Steph Curry, you just are obligated to keep pushing, I think. I just don't know what else you do. Like you have your all-time greatest player, and he's still playing really well. I just don't think you have much of a choice. You try hard for the LeBrons or try hard to trade for Giannis, try hard to do this and that. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Now, I would push back. I think this team, the guy they drafted is going to be an impact player. And so I don't think it's the same exact Warriors team that's running back this year. So that would be my pushback. Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry and the rookie and a couple of the other guys. I think you can dream about winning a couple playoff series or something like that. But yeah, there's a parallel, and the parallel is when you have great players and you won championships and you're a proud franchise, you don't just fold the tent up and say, yeah, we're kicking our stud to the curb. You don't do that. And if that costs you a few years of development and that costs you some maybe, smarter long-term decisions, I think you just live with it. And you say, you know what, we're obligated to these players who've laid it all on the line and built everything that we have. We're obligated to them to keep going, and I think that's what the Warriors are doing.
I've been making parallels to the NBA, CBA, and how restricted it is right now to Major League Baseball. I'm really interested, if I zoom out from my Giants glasses and I go how are these teams going to operate with this looming strike lockout situation? If you had to guess, how do you think it goes down here at the deadline in terms of, are teams going to be more or less likely to take on money in future years?
I'm less likely to take on big contracts, more likely to take on short-term contracts, which, I think favors the Giants. I think the Giants could, they could be creative and take on a longer-term contract if a real opportunity presented itself. They could do that, sort of zig where everybody else is zagging. B, the Giants have short-term deals to trade, and those guys might have more value than they would otherwise because of what you're talking about. I'll tell you one other thing that I think is definitely going to be a factor here down the stretch, particularly we started, I think Spadoni's called it the season from hell. We started with, the sort of the injury report from yesterday and all the weirdness of some of those injuries. If those injuries keep piling up, and you trade away some of your veterans, all of a sudden it's like, who's going to play in the last 6 weeks of the season? Here's a factor just to keep in mind. There are some players of that group of really talented young guys who are coming who are not obligated to be placed on the 40-man at the end of this year. The way the rules work is after a certain amount of time, you have to protect players on the 40-man. There are, some of those guys that you mentioned already have to be protected at the end of this year. Those guys are candidates to come up and make their major league debuts. To me, and I guess this is not hard and fast, things can change, they always can change, but anybody who is not obligated will not be in the big leagues this year. And here's why. Because if there is a lockout, non-40-man players can still be at the facility, work with coaches, have a spring training, have a minor league season. Any of those young players who are not on the 40-man are able to do all that coaching work, hands-on work with your personnel. Anybody who's on the 40-man has no ability to have any contact with anybody in the franchise. And so that is going, if I were in charge, I would just basically take all those names and lock them in a drawer and throw away the key and say, they are not coming to the big leagues this year. And that sucks. I mean, that shouldn't be the motivation for why guys get rewarded or promoted or whatever. But I would just want to protect, just in case the lockout goes longer and even if it's just spring training, like a couple months of coaching and teaching and working and dedicated work could be a difference maker for some of those guys. And so I think that's the kind of thing that the looming stuff could also impact.